All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Steve Malzberg Show. It is the Wednesday edition. We are live from our New York City studios. The great Michael Reagan will join us in studio momentarily. News today, Donald Trump gave a foreign policy address, and Carly Fiorina has been chosen by Ted Cruz to be his VP pick. Very presumptuous and very bizarre, and we'll get to that in a second as well. But I figure I'd give you a little bit of a treat here. Donald Trump holding his first rally since last night. He's in Indianapolis, and let's just pick up a couple of minutes of it if we can.
Many of them, there are very few. And you certainly don't find them very often in politics, that I can tell you. You know, you've been seeing these crazy deals that they're making. They're like desperate. They make the deal where Cruz calls. He's losing badly. He's losing all over. In fact, Lion Ted, right? Lion Ted. He's an outright liar. Boy, you know, I watched him the other night. Now, I always start off by saying, we will repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to cut Common Core. We're going to bring our education local. We're going to preserve our Second Amendment. You know, everything. Everybody knows. So I watched him the other night. Donald Trump absolutely loves Obamacare. I said, what? He's telling this to an audience. Believe me, folks, we're going to repeal it and replace it. Okay.
All right. We got a Lion Ted out of it, so it was well worth it, folks. And now let me introduce Michael Reagan, Newsmax contributor, president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation, and author of Lessons My Father Taught Me. Brand new book. Pick it up. Lessons My Father Taught Me, the Strength, Integrity, and Faith of Ronald Reagan. It is a pleasure and an honor, sir.
Good to be here.
I think I'd entertain you a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting before, he came on to speak. Yeah, Bobby Knight. I was waiting for Bobby Knight to throw the chair.
Yeah, I just made them watch that in the newsroom. I said, you guys know that Bobby Knight threw a chair?
How many red sweaters do you think Bobby Knight has?
Somebody just asked me that. I don't know. I hope he has a lot.
He must, because every time you see Bobby Knight, he's in a red sweater.
All right. So, what do you make, first of all, of the Carly Fiorina being announced today as the VP candidate with Cruz? I mean, that's not done. Right.
That's desperation. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, why do you pick someone who can bring nothing to the table? I mean, she doesn't bring any delegates to the table.
She's not from a state.
California, she lost in California, running against Barbara Boxer for the Senate of the United States. She got turned down for being president of the United States. Remember, the vice president of the United States is the person you want to replace the president. Right. Something happens to the president, they already said no. And it really is absolute desperation to be able to do this. I know there's already people saying, yes, but your father did it in 1976. Yeah, we had a Pennsylvania delegation, many of which were not committed to Gerald Ford. We were trying to move them along. And so we brought Richard Schweiker in. And what happened? It cost us Jesse Helms in Mississippi, which gave the whole thing to, in fact, the President of the United States. Completely different.
Yeah, no, completely different indeed. All right, so Donald Trump, the presidential Donald Trump, which we saw for one day after, a couple of weeks ago, after a victory in a primary a couple of Tuesdays ago, and he said Senator Cruz, Governor Kasich. We said, aha! He's losing the Lion Ted. He's going to be presidential. No more.
No more. That's what his audience likes. And I've said this before. Maybe I said it to you, too. I said, I'm not bothered by what he says. I am bothered by the applause when he says it. Because he says that. And, if he wants to become the president of the United States, you've got to have the Ted Cruz supporters there. You've got to have the Kasich supporters there. You've got to have all the people that you ran against. Right. You're going to have their people with you. It's like watching Survivor. The last 9 voted off all become part of the jury. Right. And then they vote who gets the $1 million. Right. Well, all these people are going to vote who's going to get the $1 million, and it keeps on demeaning these people that, in fact, he's not going to get the $1 million.
But Cruz also is not being Mr. Nice Guy to Trump either. In reality,
that's the late coming to at that point. Yes, he may say things now, but it seems to be just part of the play with Donald Trump.
Byron York just did a story today about how 58, 68, 70, and state after state after state, they love Donald Trump's plan on Muslims. Are you surprised by that? Republicans do.
No, I mean, I'm not surprised by that. I am worried by that you have a party who wants to, in fact, do that, and they feel that way. Let's stop Muslims from coming into the United States of America. Let's make sure. I mean, I understand the issue about those coming in from Syria and whatever. Something has to be done there.
Right.
Absolutely understand it. But when you just say Muslims, that causes problems. Or when you talk about we're going to deport the illegals and what have you. What bothers me is the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have not come together in the last umpteen years. That let's put together a immigration policy.
Well, we have the law is that a wall has to be built. There's also other law that Obama has said, no, here's my law. I mean, so he's,
But let me tell you what the problem with the Republican Party here. I was talking to a member of Congress here maybe a year and a half ago. And I was talking about immigration policy, and I was talking about an immigration policy, if you will. And the member of Congress said to me, God, that's such a great idea. What do you think Laura Ingraham will say about it? And I looked at him, I said, why the hell are you worried about that?
It has to pass the talk radio test.
And it has to pass the talk radio test.
Yeah.
This is why you hear me say, my father would have trouble today passing the talk radio test to become the nominee of the party. I mean, here's a guy that raised taxes, signed an abortion bill, no fault divorce, and was a union leader. Think about that guy stepping forward and saying, I think I'll run for the presidency.
All right, which brings us to lessons my father taught me, the strength, integrity, and faith of Ronald Reagan.
Non-political book, by the way.
Non-political book, and a great picture on the cover of which we put up already. You could put up again of your dad and a horse. He loved horseback riding so much. So lessons your father taught you. Give us some of the lessons your father taught you.
Listen, he taught me about integrity. Yeah, there's so many of those lessons, to be honest with you.
And they're in the book.
They're all in the book.
Yeah.
But I'm still in a learning process to really absorb all the things he was trying to teach me, when he was alive. A typical kid. Yeah, Dad, right. Sure
and
thing.
Then you say, wait a minute.
You go,
that's what he meant, right?
That's what he meant by it. The stories he told. You talk about horseback riding at this point. I spent a great amount of time with my dad on the back of a horse. Now, when I was a kid growing up, I got to tell you, I think I tell a story in the book too. He used to ride English. And I have friends.
Which means for
English
us city folks?
No horn, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Like you see in the horse races, right? That type of thing. And I'd have friends of mine. I'm like 8 years old, 9 years old. Dad's picking me up on a Saturday morning, take me out to the ranch. And I go up to Dad, I said, Dad, please today don't ride English. Don't wear the joppers. Don't put on the high boots and don't ride English. And he'd go, well, why? I said, don't do that. It just really looks silly. Today go Western. Just for me.
Western,
and he kind of laughed and chuckled at me. But I spent a lot of time, my dad picked me up, driving me out to the ranch, whether it was shooting ground squirrels, riding a horse, chopping wood, swimming, things of that nature. I mean, people ask me, what were the best years of your life with your dad before and after he was president of the United States?
You know what I want to ask you in the minute and a half, minute and 10 we have left? What did he teach you? What values did he instill in you that helped you deal, maybe now that if you look back and think of this question, when he was unresponsive, when he was in his decline, and when he didn't know who anybody was? But what did anything he had done or said or taught you that instilled in you make it easier to deal with that?
I'll tell you, we found another way to communicate. It was through hugging. Tell the story in the book. I told my dad I loved him for the first time in the 1990s, and my dad said, well, I love you too. And we began to hug, and when he had Alzheimer's disease, the way we communicated, and I didn't know this was going to be it, was I would hug him hello and hug him goodbye, and when he got to the point where he couldn't say my name, he would open up his arms knowing I was the guy that hugged him hello or hugged him goodbye. And one day, Colleen and I forgot, we were at the house, we're visiting, and we left. And I forgot to.
I got to tell you.
And he stood at the door like this. Come back.
And I've told you this before. First time I ever met you, I wished I could have met your dad. I was at the. I went with the Mets to the Rose Garden when they won in '86. I'm proud to know you. And the book, you will meet his dad. He's saying Michael Reagan's dad, of course, the great Ronald Reagan, with lessons my father taught me. Thank you, sir. Cheryl Atkinson joins us first.